2022 at 5:30. And if everyone could join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call of members, please.
Deborah Dawson,
Here.
Henry Grandison. Henry Grandison,
He's muted.
Present.
Rich John will be arriving late. Dan Klein has asked to be excused. Ann Corman,
Present.
Mike Lane,
Here.
Greg Mezzi,
Here.
Veronica Pillar,
Here.
Lee Shirtliff,
Here.
Mike Sigler,
Here.
Travis Brooks. Travis Brooks. Mr. Brooks is excused. Randy Brown,
Here.
Amanda Champion,
Here.
Shauna Black,
Here.
12 members present.
Thank you.
Sorry, 11 members present.
Thank you. This evening, we have one proclamation for Latinx Heritage Month. Would like to start that off. Whereas the 500-year-old Latinx culture, steeped in tradition and centered on principles of family and community, strengthens the fabric of our entire society. And whereas Latinx people have been a part of our nation from its very inception, their presence in its territories contributing to shape its society and culture. And whereas many Latinx people live and work in obscurity, their contributions to the common good never achieving the recognition they deserve. And whereas the Latinx people serve the United States at the highest levels of business, government, education, science, and the military. And whereas Tompkins County is home to an active, growing, and civically engaged Latinx community. And whereas virtually every aspect of our community's life has been influenced by Latinx, whether in arts, medicine, government, labor, business, or volunteerism. And whereas the Tompkins County community enthusiastically celebrates Latinx Heritage Month from September 15th through October 15th. And whereas September 15th was chosen as a starting point for the celebration because it is the anniversary of the independence of 5 Latin American countries, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Now, therefore, I, Shauna Black, Chair of the Tompkins County Legislature, do hereby proclaim the month of September 15th, 2022 through October 15th, 2022 as Latinx Heritage Month. And I will pass that on to Katrina, and she will mail that out to our friends with the Latinx Society here in Ithaca. Next, announcement of executive sessions. We will not have an executive session this evening. I'm sure my colleagues are very disappointed. Okay, next is privilege of the floor. And this is for our public. If anyone is here in our public and would like to speak on privilege of the floor, we would ask that you fill out one of our blue cards, which is located on the back table. And I would like to read the rules for speaking under privilege of the floor first. I agree to a 3-minute time limit. I agree not to raise my voice. I agree not to use lewd, obscene, profane, slanderous, or libelous language, or speak or act in a manner that would tend to incite a breach of the peace. I agree not to speak about county personnel matters. Personnel matters include comments about the job performance of a named county employee other than elected officials. After 3 minutes, I agree to leave the microphone and yield the floor. Transferring time to another person is not permitted. I agree that if I cause a disruption and am asked to leave, I will leave the chambers. And our first speaker this evening is Jane from the city of Ithaca.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Jane Glaubman, and I live right up the street in Fall Creek. and I've lived in Ithaca for 10 years. And I'm here today to speak about the situation at TCAT and a campaign that I'm part of that you might have heard of called the Free Cat campaign. We would like to, if you're not familiar with it, we would like to see mass transit expanded and made free for all residents of Tompkins County. One of the things that I've noticed over the time that I've lived in Ithaca, and I lived here, I moved here in middle age. I lived most of my adult life in New York City, and I moved here to come and do a PhD at Cornell, which I did, when I was, in my 50s. And I've noticed that Ithaca has become more and more unequal, that it always was, which New York City is, but that, and I don't just mean Ithaca, I mean Ithaca and the surrounding area of Tompkins County. There's a lot of wealth here. There are very expensive houses. Many people who think of themselves as ordinary middle-class people, professionals and people like that, buy houses, see them appreciate significantly in value. They have investments and they become wealthier. But there's also a lot of real poverty here. I have worked with the Poor People's Campaign. I've visited trailer parks on the edge of town. I've visited people who, don't even have windows that seal in their homes and things like that. There's just a tremendous inequality here. I've also been participating this summer in the Transportation Equity Needs Assessment Project. I'll be facilitating a focus group for this tomorrow evening. And one of the things I've noticed in our numerous meetings is that many of the people who come, who have been recruited to be part of this, are people who face challenges in getting around the area that may not be true for people who can afford cars and just hop in the car and go where they need to go. So for example, there was a guy who works at Target, which is, as you know, up a really steep hill on the interstate. He can't afford a car. Gas is really expensive. And TCAT just announced like a 20 to 25% cut in service. And even now they're hemorrhaging drivers and mechanics. And there are also people with disabilities or people who in other ways really actually need help to get around. And we have theoretically an Ithaca Green New Deal, but in fact, something like 40% of our emissions come from private vehicles, and there's very little alternative for people to get around other than driving their own cars. And that needs to change. And there's just one more tidbit that I'd like to put in here, which is that I've had a number of meetings with bus drivers since we've been working on this project. And their point of view about the problems at TCAT is that my time?
You could finish up.
Okay. Their point of view about the problems at TCAT is that they are being asked to work 6 days a week, often 14 to 16-hour days for salaries that do not permit them to buy houses in Ithaca. And that's why people are leaving and bus drivers keep quitting. So I actually think we need to pay them more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Stephanie.
Hello, recovering from a COVID booster, so please bear with me, not super prepared, but I agree with everything that Jane said regarding TCAT. I was born and raised here, and I'm really proud of that in a lot of ways, but there are a lot of ways that we really do not live up to the image we would like to project, what we would like to think about ourselves. And the fact that our public transportation system is in the state it's in is really kind of embarrassing, I think. I live downtown now, don't take TCAT as often as I used to, but this summer tried to take the bus a few times and it just didn't come at all. And luckily I was not in a rush, but this is a basic thing that the local government should, do as a service for people who live here and also as people who take climate change seriously, right? Come on, and listening to the TCAT drivers talk about their working conditions and how they're feeling about things. And it just struck me that, I don't know if you all don't talk to them or what, but the cops complain, they scream bloody murder about, they don't have enough resources, but here we have people it seems like the system is falling apart and that this is not the emergency that, it is when IPD, comes crying about whatever. So yeah, I think that, we really need to make some investment here, take things seriously. As Jane said, TCAT is a lifeline for a lot of poor and working class people in the community. Yeah, so please, let's be proud of our public services and, our commitments to, climate change action and all of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else here that would like to speak on privilege of the floor? Okay. If we could move on to municipal officials, and I see that George McGonigal is here from the city of Ithaca.
Thank you very much. Is this on?
It is.
It's good to see you all. I usually come the first meeting of the month, but Patrick and I switched this time, so I'll be back your first meeting in October. A few things to report to you. We're entering our budget deliberations in October. We'll have several extra meetings to go over the budget for 2023. We have 5 new council members, so it's going to be challenging. We've already had one meeting to try and tell the new people how the process works, and I think it'll go fine. Last meeting, we had a presentation from Mona Smiley about the Community Justice Center work plans for 2022 and 2023. We didn't vote on those plans. We want to look at them over the course of this month and give questions to Mona, and then we'll probably vote on that in October. We've established 2 new subcommittees. One is the Public Safety Special Committee, which is continuing the work around recommendation number 1 of the 17 recommendations for reimagining public safety. It's the one that relates to the city only, and we're continuing that work. That's 5 members of council doing that. And the other subcommittee we've just created, and it hasn't met yet, it's going to meet for the first time this week, is a committee studying the homelessness problem. And the city is hoping for cooperation from the county. I know the county thinks this is a serious problem too. And it's actually a crisis now. It's something that we can't just put off. So I encourage you, and I will encourage my council member colleagues, we got to do something. 2 days ago, a person died in the encampment that's between Cecil B. Malone and Brindley Street. This is, I think, the biggest problem we face right now, and I hope we can work together to make it better. That's all I've got, and I'll take questions.
Thank you, George. Any questions for George? Amanda Champion?
Hi, George. Thanks for being here. As you and your colleagues talk about your budget, I know that the library is coming to you for funding. Will you support that this year?
You know, I don't understand that, really. I don't understand your...
You don't understand why Ithaca should support the Ithaca Library?
We pay our county taxes, right? How many people in Ithaca, what's the percentage of people in Ithaca for the whole county? It's about 40%. We do pay for the library.
Okay, So that would be a no. You're not going to.
I don't know. I mean, I know you guys feel very strongly about it. I wish you could explain it to me and maybe I'll agree with you. But I don't personally don't see the need to pay twice.
Okay, thanks.
Mike doesn't like that answer.
Well, I don't, we don't generally go back and forth, but I would just say in my community, we pay twice. We have a library that we support and we support the TCPL.
Does the county support the Dryden Library?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'd love to talk about it.
I think you guys should probably meet at the library and have a discussion.
I think it would be better if we met at Liquid State.
Probably so, yeah.
Pizza's pretty close to the library.
Okay, any other questions or comments for George? Mike Sigler.
You brought up the person dying and stuff.
Mike, can you use your microphone?
Yeah. You brought up the person dying in that area. I was just wondering, is there anything that's going to be done about the house that's been built there? There's like a house on the inlet.
Right. With electric.
That's news to me. So.
Well,
That's electric.
we hope to do something about that. It's not going to happen today.
Well, like condemn it or something. I just know that if I were to go and set up a house on my driveway in downtown Ithaca, the city would have something to say about it. I don't know. I find that peculiar, I guess.
It is peculiar.
You're very agreeable tonight, George.
He's so unlike himself.
Can we go back to the library? No. Okay. Any other questions or comments for George? Okay. As always, George, it's great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
It's nice to be here together again.
That's right. That's right. Okay, now it's time for privilege of the floor for legislators. Mike Lane.
I had the privilege last Friday night of attending the watch fire at Myers Park in Lansing, which is sponsored every year by the veterans or the Vietnam War veterans in our area. If anyone has not attended one of those, it's pretty amazing. The cadets from the ROTC units from Cornell come down, all in uniform. There are speeches, there are, and then as it gets dark, they light a large bonfire at the edge of the lake. Boats come nearby on the lake and watch it from out there, and many people attend. We were told that this was the 31st time that they have done this, and it's to commemorate those POWs and missing in action members of armed services who are not accounted for yet. I learned that there are over 81,000 of those, and that probably about half of them, they said, were probably lost at sea. And that's very, very difficult, obviously, to ever recover someone who was lost at sea that way. I was pleased that our veteran service officer, J.R. Claiborne, was there along with his wife, our former chair, Leslyn McBean Claiborne, and their daughter, Indira. Also joining us there was Rob Henry from our technical department here at the legislature. And Rob brought his camera and took a bunch of photographs. And I asked if it would be all right with our chair if I asked Dominic Recchio and Rob to show a few of those, because I thought they were kind of exciting. So we could take just a second of everybody's time to see some of the photos from Friday night. The watchfire also is used to decommission American flags that have outlived their usefulness, and so they're respectfully burned. Thank you, Dominic. Thank you, Rob, for those wonderful photographs. And thank you to the Vietnam Veterans of America for and our local chapter for sponsoring this each year. Please come out next year. It's the third Friday in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Ann Corman.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I wanted to thank Jane and Stephanie for coming to talk to us today at Privilege of the Floor. I also wanted to say that it's Suicide Prevention Month, and we have the 988 lifeline that folks can call. And that's a national line, and you can call or text to a counselor, and it's open 24 hours a day. And so please spread the word on that. I've mentioned this before as during the privilege of the floor, but there was a time in my life where I attempted suicide upon learning that another one of my siblings, in addition to myself, was sexually abused. There's not always a precipitating factor when someone is feeling or thinking about suicide. So sometimes it's out of the blue. So please check in with people, see how they're doing, and just remind people about the lifeline. It could make a difference. It's 988. You can call or text. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Okay, I have Veronica, and then Greg, and then Randy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for sharing that, Annie. Two things. One, kind of bouncing off the Latinx Heritage Month proclamation. If you're not aware, Puerto Rico, part of the United States, got hit with the devastating Hurricane Fiona recently. And it's been, a few days, and the majority of Puerto Ricans are without electricity now due to, I'm not a history buff, but due to a under-resourced, underfunded infrastructure there. And I think, Puerto Ricans, part of why they historically get written off stems from racism and stems from their status as a territory. These are people in no country other than the US, at least administratively. I recognize a lot of folks would like Puerto Rico to be independent. But as for now, it's like an American responsibility to support their infrastructure, and they don't get to vote for our Congress, our president, things like that. And it's really a tragedy and a human rights crisis. And I think, so I just wanted to acknowledge that, and also lift it as a reminder, obviously Tompkins County is a very different place, but to always keep in mind whether, what populations are getting left out maybe here, who don't have their voices heard here, and the importance of maintaining our infrastructure. So it's not just functional, like the power grid was functional, but robust in all kinds of ways. Second thing, I got to go to Streets Alive on Sunday. Much happier note. If you don't know what that is, Bike Walk Tompkins, generally a couple times a year, closes down a bunch of blocks of a street, closes them to cars for a few hours on an afternoon, and it's open to bikes and rollerblading and walking. And there's, all sorts of people and organizations come and have activities and food and information tables. So I brought some stuff I know the recycling center, our recycling and materials management department was there, and our county office for the aging was there. And then I went there with a bunch of materials from mostly our health department, our emergency response department, and our beautiful values posters from HR, and had a table there. Building off what Mike said, Rob Henry came also to take photos of that. So thanks to him for that. Unfortunately, I had gotten really hungry and left my table when he came by. So yeah. But I just wanted to say that was great. Thanks to the departments who lent things. This little tick tool that the health department had was the biggest hit. I got to hear lots of stories. It's like plastic. It's not as scary as metal, and it's little tweezers. And then there's a little, like, I don't know what you call it. Like, you know, the back end of a hammer that you could like stick under the head of a tick and pull it out. So I got to hear a lot of a pry bar. Yes.
Pry bar.
Anyway, yeah. So
That was a big hit.
it was the biggest hit. I attempted to bribe people for any kind of feedback on county government in exchange for candy, which I'm still workshopping my public engagement. But I'd like to read out, because I know I'm rambling. This will only take me like 2 minutes to read out what people wrote on what do you wish your county government knew? And this is just other people's writing. The county ledge appoints members to the IDA who vote tax abatements that undermine the counties and cities and school districts' property taxes. Homelessness has increased a lot in the last couple of years. I would like to see NYSEG become a public utility. Affordable housing is not affordable for most people, as the median income is not representative. This one was me writing paraphrased, but we need to be more welcoming to immigrants such as those arriving across the border in Texas. You need to empathize with those who cannot afford their apartments/homes and make housing truly affordable. Gasoline-powered weed whackers and power lawnmowers put more pollutants in the air than cars do. California has passed a law against selling them, and DC has a law against using them. Source Sierra Club's magazine. They also make a god-awful noise. Let's prohibit them. How many people are actually homeless in this county, including double-ups, sleeping in car, couch surfing? That was a question I meant to look up the answer to, although as we maybe know, that's really hard to count. But that's in our homelessness and housing needs survey that was put out this year. More bike, less gas cars. That was the youngest contributor. Also paraphrased, when we build housing, where are the storefronts to host the jobs for people to earn money to pay for the housing? And finally, there are many problems with what the IDA is and does, but to start with, the TC Workers Center should be on it. So non-scientific, non-survey of people's inputs. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Veronica. Greg Mezzi.
Yes, thanks. I was just thinking, we have a lot of collective and creative brain power in the community, right? We're a very well-educated community. There's people that have some great ideas. And we often get recommendations from the public, free TCAT has one that we continue to hear. I would like to hear thoughts on how we may pay for that or bring that to fruition. It's budget season. Our budget is public. Our agreements with TCAT are public. I'm assuming, someone correct me if I'm wrong or about to be. I would love to hear community's thoughts on how we bring this to a reality and what other costs we may have to trade or what the community members think is, willing to be sacrificed, to keep taxes, or if it's something that we should raise taxes to fund. I just would be open to hearing what people's thoughts are, because we've been hearing a lot about it. And it's something that I think we should take a look at some point. And I think it'd be great to have community involvement on specifically how to get it done. So I appreciate those that come to speak for it.
Thank you, Greg. Randy Brown.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say that Enfield is having their annual Harvest Festival this week on the 24th at the Enfield Community Council. It starts at 11. There's a chicken barbecue. And if there's any county departments going or not going, I'd be glad to provide things like the famous tick puller to people. So hope you come to that. And there's games for kids and a lot of things like that going on, this craft sale and those kinds of things. And then Newfield is having their first annual dance in the covered bridge on the 24th in the evening at 5 with a band. They're closing off the covered bridge and there'll be free hot dogs and those kinds of things. So anybody wants to come. So.
Thank you, Randy. Next is Mike Sigler.
Just wanted to say, Randy Brown, it's on because Lansing is having its carnival on Saturday as well. So I don't know who will be victorious in this match. Parade is at 6 on Saturday. The carnival runs all day on Saturday, and please come out and see it. It'll be fun. And I think you can even, if you go to that, you can even scoot over to the Newfield as well. So you get the whole texture of the county in one weekend. So there'll be carnival rides and all that good stuff, and of course fried dough. So come enjoy. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else for legislator privilege of the floor? Rich, John?
Thanks, Shauna, and I apologize for being late. I just stepped out of the car coming back from the NISAC conference, and I was wondering, did you want reports from NISAC? Did anybody else talk about it yet?
We have not had reports, but you're welcome to give one.
I thought it was a very useful conference, and I attended several different presentations. I also attended the Public Safety Committee of NISAC, which I am a member, and we have a new member, Lee Shirtliff, who attended as well. We approved several different resolutions to go to Albany on a variety of matters. I'm happy to get into detail on those, but maybe Lee would want to talk about them if there was something that he thought was of particular interest. I attended several different sessions, and one was counties responding to the mental health crisis. And what we're seeing here in our county is unsurprisingly duplicated in counties all over the state. And they're struggling with a lot of the same things we're looking at. I asked if I could get the PowerPoints from the presentations because I thought there was some useful information in there in trying to coordinate response from a lot of different directions, that you have mental health professionals, you have hospitals, you have law enforcement, you have the jails, you have all sorts of different directions that we're getting information about the mental health situation in each county, but they're not necessarily coordinated. There was a long discussion about 988 and the rollout of it in July of this year, and how it's transforming some of the thinking and evidence data collection on mental health issues. And it could be really useful to us because it is a focal point along with several of the others, but one that's probably going to gain a lot more importance because there are so many more calls going to 988 than the prior numbers. I think the advertising on it has been better, and we're receiving a lot more connection that way. I then also wanted to talk about a presentation called Get Ready, Get Set, New York State's Progress Towards Legalizing Cannabis. And this is coming at us very fast. By the end of the year, there will likely be legal cannabis sales in our county. There were some places that opted out, but we did not. There's 2 different tracks for becoming licensed. One of them has a very limited window and is focused on giving opportunities to people who were impacted directly by a cannabis-related conviction. The time for that has run out on some of the applications, say to be a producer and a processor, but it's still open for another till next Monday for retail sales, so being a dispensary. I don't think we're anywhere near ready. There are some significant unanswered questions on how this is going to be managed. I think we'll probably begin and bumble through it and figure it out as we go. A particular area of concern that was raised at the session was on stores that are selling a sticker, something of really no value at all, for a lot of money, and then gifting marijuana. And they're doing that now. And a lot of people in the room spoke up saying there has not been an adequate response to this. I believe that what we'll end up seeing is tax fraud cases against these places, because what they're really doing is selling marijuana without doing any kind of appropriate tax withholding. And the tax structure for marijuana is different than typical sales. There's a direct sales tax and then an excise tax. It will likely lead to some significant money coming to the county and to other local governments. A lot more to pay attention to there. I wanted to mention the district attorney for Erie County got up and spoke and talked quite a bit about these shootings in Buffalo. And he made the point that public safety is an essential element to pretty much us providing any other service. And we ignore public safety at our peril. And I thought he was quite eloquent in explaining that. He also said that he usually has 50 resumes on his desk to fill open positions. He doesn't have any. He's seeing exactly the same struggles in finding qualified people that we're seeing in one industry after another. And I thought that was quite interesting. Finally, I attended a session on funding your county projects through federal and state grants. And I wanted to share a little information on that because I was surprised how much money is coming through in public grants, particularly from the federal government. It's gigantic and it's staged over the next 5 years. We're in year 1. And the message, one is don't go for grants if you're not prepared to really manage them, that you can get in a lot of trouble if you're not prepared. However, what the speaker said was the large cities, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, they have staff that are already on the ground doing this, and they're getting a ton of money. However, the grants are set up that if we ask, we likely will get substantial money. If we do not go in for these grants, it will pass by in this 5-year window, and we will miss tremendous opportunity. There is more money going through grant programs in this 5-year window than perhaps has been ever seen. I see George over there, and I was particularly interested there. I think there's $100 billion going into a program to reconnect cities, and particularly to do connections, say where an interstate went straight through a particular neighborhood. And there's, equity issues there, of course. But I've been trying to talk to people at the city for some time now saying we should do pedestrian bridges over Route 13. That early in the 1960s, Route 13 had a profound impact on the city of Ithaca and frankly, the county ever since. And it divided the residential areas from the lake. There are reasons why there's limited lake access, and Route 13 is a big part of that. This money is set aside specifically, say, to do pedestrian bridges over Route 13. It could be a really exciting revenue source to do that kind of reconnection work. But that's one example of just way more grant programs. And I'm sorry to go on some length, but it was just eye-opening to me because another speaker got up and talked about how there was the Ghostbusters rule that you don't cross the streams. They had these photon things. Don't let them connect. Do not put one grant next to another. And that approach has really been tossed out, that the idea is dig once, that if you're going to put in fiber optic, do it at the same time you're doing your water system, while you're doing your new roads, get it done, and you can layer grants. There's also been a real change in terms of matching funds, that there is way more flexibility on where you can get matching funds from. And there's a real encouraging element about getting private money. Say if there's a retail store that, and I'll use the example of a pedestrian bridge, that it would benefit that retail store and they see the value and they would put money into it. You can use that as matching funds. Also, ARPA money that was used for revenue replacement is wide open for county matching funds to go after these grants. Again, we probably, having sat there and listened to this, we probably should think about hiring some real grant expertise in our county. I'll look at Bridget for a moment. You know, getting that personnel in-house to help us with not only identifying the grants, but running the program to make sure we have adequate training on grant management and to do the tracking so you don't get in trouble. Those are all functions that can be paid for out of the grants. So if we're smart about it, we can do it at very low cost to the county and get remarkable benefit. Yeah, I'll stop there, but it was really some useful information, I thought.
Great. Thank you, Rich. Any other legislator for privilege of the floor? Mike Sigler?
Before it slips away though, land bridges, much better idea than pedestrian bridges, just saying.
Land bridges, I'm all in, Mike.
Okay.
Can I ask the question?
Yeah, sure.
Rich, did many of these people have consultants working with them for grants already?
My sense of the people in the room, absolutely not. I think the upstate counties are in exactly the same boat we're in, that we just have kind of been waiting and not truly advised of the amount of money that is coming to these grant programs. You know, I don't know if county administration has, I don't want to put you on the spot, but it was a surprise to me how much money is there.
And I think maybe what we can discuss during budget is maybe even doing a member filed OTR for a position that would be like a grant writer and follower, you know, whether it's through a consulting firm or in-house. I think that's something we should definitely explore. Yeah.
Agree.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from legislators? Okay. I am going to move on to the chair's report. I would like to welcome everyone to our meeting tonight and also recognize a few of our high school visitors, one of them being my daughter, Graham. I promised her I would embarrass her this evening. I also like to thank their government teacher, Miss Augustine, for making attendance to this meeting a requirement for her class. It's hard to believe that these kids, that many of these kids will be able to vote in a few short months. I'm also thankful they are taking their civic duties seriously, and many have volunteered to work for the Board of Elections at our upcoming general election, Tuesday, November 8th. On another important note, let me state clearly that Tompkins County unequivocally supports freedom of press and free speech. We believe in and strive for a transparent and truthful government. We believe in encouraging public participation and appreciate the public input and feedback that we receive, even when it's contrary to our own opinions. On the topic of freedom of press, recently there have been defamatory and uninformed accusations made against our county communications director related to his relationship and interactions with the local press. The fact is that each local publication, when asked, has come forward in the press to deny any abuse of power or misconduct by Mr. Recchio. It is also a fact that our county attorney, Bill Troy, issued a report that found no base to the accusations after his review. Our county values explicitly include integrity and respect. We hold our employees and those who engage with us to those same values. The accusations in question center around corrections that were requested on a column referencing Reimagine Public Safety. Unfortunately, reimagining has become a flashpoint for our community. Some groups automatically and loudly claim that reimagining is anti-police or entail defunding the police. But let me be very clear. Regardless of politics or party lines, that could not be further from the truth. Reimagining public safety is an investment in a better, more transparent, and more equitable way of policing. It's an investment in finding ways to meet our community's increasing need while freeing up law enforcement officers to handle serious and criminal issues. It is not an anti-police or defund the police measure. Associating other difficult challenges facing our communities with reimagining isn't helping us solve problems either. Instead, it's making challenges more political and harder to address. It's also making it much harder to communicate the truth of what is actually happening, including under reimagining. Correcting the record of what is and isn't under reimagining is the work of this county, just as supporting our law enforcement agencies and emergency services. As we embark upon a new year with recovery funds, opioid settlement funds, and different priorities brought forth in our budget, we have the chance to examine ongoing issues that continue to plague this county, such as mental health, substance abuse, and homelessness. I'm personally tired of hearing that legislators and specifically Democrats don't support law enforcement. At this table, as elected officials, we pride ourselves on the great work that is done by our county employees, specifically those that work at our sheriff's office. We recognize that each and every day, deputies leave their families to go to work and protect our communities, schools, and families. Let me say it one more time. Tompkins County supports our sheriff's office and law enforcement. They say that money speaks, and while I can stand here and talk about supporting our sheriff's office, the real evidence is looking at our investment. The sheriff's department has $6.6 million annual operating budget. Reimagining public safety has added to our sheriff's budget and to the Community Justice Center, including additional staff, funding to support 6 of the collaborative county-city reimagining public safety plans, and the Sheriff's Office Unarmed Response Pilot Program, a 3-year pilot, all totaling an additional $500,000 in 2022, with more being requested in our 2023 recommended budget. In our 2023 budget, we will see the addition of positions in the District Attorney Office, Mental Health, and Sheriff's Office to support additional important work. As public officials and community leaders, we can't let unfounded and political accusations taint the positive work we are doing on a daily basis or with our work on reimagining public safety and our efforts to support law enforcement. We have real complex and difficult issues facing our county. It is important to face these issues collaboratively and with the respect shown to differences of opinion. Sowing the seeds of division does not help us solve the challenges before us, and it does not help us stay on task to work through the important responsibilities that we have been given. Thank you. Next, let's move on to our report by County Administrator. Lisa Holmes is here virtually, but Bridget Nugent is also here live.
Well, I'll just jump in virtually and you can hear me, I'm assuming. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for those remarks and for the supporting the work that we're doing in the county. It's important work. I am speaking to you from I just got out of the afternoon's NISAC conference in Buffalo. And I was also pleased to hear Rich's updates from the sessions which he attended, and I have attended some different sessions. So I've also gotten some valuable information on what other counties are doing around the organizing of an opioid task force, particularly Erie County, who's had an opioid task force since 2016. I've also attended a session around strategic planning for county operations, which we're going to be embarking upon in a few short months. And I've heard the NISAC staff analysis around budgeting and the economy. which is a confirmation of the mixed messages in the data around low unemployment and positive consumer spending, but the likelihood of at least a mild recession seems to be rising. And the New York State Retirement Fund exceeded its fiscal return goals for 2022, but the comptroller has slightly increased the rates, just under 2% increase due to current market conditions. So that won't affect what we have budgeted for our fringe rate around pensions, but still the economic headwinds are leaning toward budgeting caution. There was also been a discussion around the assigned counsel 18B rate increase. That's the per hour rate that we pay our attorneys on the assigned counsel panel. The rate would be increasing from $75 to $150. In Tompkins County, this would amount to a $1.8 million increase. And in this court case, the state has been charged by the presiding judge to go back and look at including this in state funding. But what I'm hearing is that the governor's office believe that counties can afford this increase. So this is going to be a priority for NISAC in its upcoming session, because certainly that's not the case for upstate counties. So those are just a smattering of what I've been learning here at the NISAC conference. It's been valuable to be here. And in other updates, I just wanted to inform the legislature and the public we're in the final stages of the search process for Chief Equity Diversity Officer and Deputy County Administrator. We've had excellent candidates, and I hope that by the next legislature meeting, I'll be able to announce. And I also just want to extend my thanks to members of the legislature as well as staff for their participation in the process. And that's it from me.
Thank you, Lisa. Any questions for Lisa Holmes? Henry Grandison.
Yes, Lisa, what recessionary guidelines do you see increased during the time when you did the budget book and now?
I think I was taking that into consideration when preparing the budget. And so I think that I was proceeding with relative caution in terms of projecting sales tax revenues and so forth. I don't think that any further adjustments would be indicated at this point.
Thank you.
I think what I'm hearing from NISAC and others is that that caution is indicated, and that those projections that we built into the budget are probably on track.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Lisa? Rich John?
I would just make a comment for the new members of the legislature who weren't here when we dealt with the COVID. We made mid-year corrections. So, we are able to react if there's a substantial change in the economy. And we've done it. It was very painful, but we did it. Yeah.
Thank you, Rich. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Next, we have County Attorney Bill Troy.
Yes, so we've been busy. Things have picked up somehow for reasons I don't fully understand. So we have some negotiation going on the TCAP matter that probably is winding up very soon, from my lips to God's ears, as they say. Several cases that have been filed in court against the county seem to be coming alive. So we have several conferences with judges to start picking trial dates. And all in all, it comes in waves, and the wave is now a little higher than we've seen in recent months, but we can handle it.
Any questions or comments for Bill Troy? Okay, thank you, Bill. Next, we have Director of Finance, Rick Snyder.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to share my screen for a quick contingent account report. This was requested a few weeks back, and since we've got all budget adjustments posted for 2022 and totally up to date, I'm going to share my screen so you can see where we're at. As you can see, the contingent fund started with a $900,000 balance, and we've done a dozen or more appropriations from this using resolutions adopted by the legislature for each one. Within the last month and a half, these last four at the bottom amount to about $400,000, and that has taken us over the mark, so to speak, where we now can show that we've spent more than the 900. We've spent $1,015,000. So we currently have a deficit or a shortage in our contingent fund. This is approximately where we were at last year at this time in August or September. So what we are recommending going forward to cure this deficit and to provide the legislature with more contingent funds to get through the remainder of fiscal year 2022. We're asking county administration to provide a resolution for the legislature to consider that would provide an additional $1 million. In my note here at the bottom, I had asked for anywhere between $500,000 and $1.2 million. Since then, they've gotten back to me and they're recommending another $1 million be added to your contingent account. And in fact, I saw that resolution that Samantha provided to me today that's ready to go onto the next budget committee meeting, $4 million. And so you can anticipate seeing that at another legislative meeting to provide additional contingent account. But I sent this report to you by email yesterday. So if you haven't drawn it up or pulled it up yet, you can see all the detail. We've had resolutions anywhere. Some of them are for pay increases. The biggest ones were for the COVID testing, which was $200,000. The biggest one that just put us over the brink at the last meeting was deconstruction of the Tioga Street property to the tune of $150,000. Another big one was the sheriff's replacement pay and terminal pay. They always put in for a request, one or two of these before we get to the end of the fiscal year. This one was for $188,000 because they had 7 on disability and 4 on terminal pay. So we had quite a few big ones, not many in total, but we've spent the $900,000 and we're requesting an additional $1 million to get through the rest of the year. Any questions on this report?
Mike Lane.
Thanks for this, Rick. You're asking for $1 million to go for additional contingency. Do we have anything on the horizon that might justify such a large figure?
No, last year we asked for $1.6 million extra, and we ended up with about $500,000. As I wrote down here below, we asked for $1.6 million at this time, but we ended with about $500,000 left over. So we only really used $1.1 million of that extra appropriation at the end. We're just going by feel here. We really never know because they're contingent. We don't know what the contingent is. We don't know what we don't know. And so it's a guess. And hopefully we'll apply that $1 million and maybe you won't have to use hardly any of it. Maybe just a couple $100,000. Or maybe you use it all and we'll have to come back to you one more time before the end of the year. But that's how it goes with contingent fund. It's for things that aren't in the budget things that are unforeseen and that couldn't be budgeted. And that's why we have this account in the first place.
Thank you.
Deb Dawson and then Greg Mezzi.
Yeah, I would just say that in the absence of having a crystal ball, the best we can do is estimate based on prior experience. And obviously, whatever we don't use, we put back in the general fund. So I don't think it's particularly controversial to set aside another $1 million.
Thank you, Deb. Greg Mezzi.
I'm just glad we don't get charged late fees or, overdraft fees, like many others would. This is why it's good to balance your checkbook before you write a check. I think that this type of report, while I see its simplicity, I think going forward, as we look at contingent fund spending, this is a report that we absolutely should look at. Whatever the contingent fund balance is, whatever the resolution that we've approved to date, I don't see any reason why we can't have a simple tracking for this and know where we're at and help guide the decision in contingent fund spending, so that we're just better informed in the future. So hopefully that this can continue and we can add another line if we pass a resolution that adds to the amount, and we just keep adding past resolutions, and this information gets shared as we get contingent resolutions going forward.
Deborah Dawson.
Well, I'm curious.
Yeah.
Of course, that would be useful, but it's not as if we have a lot of choice most of the time about whether or not we're going to meet these expenses out of contingent funds. So
It's up to the 14 of us, though.
I'm sorry?
That's up to the 14 of us. We do have a choice because we have to vote.
Well, yeah, we do have a choice, but what are you going to do? Not pay the county's bills?
I mean, are these bills coming to us before they're spent, or are they coming to us? I mean,
Oh, I think a lot of times it
If they're
doesn't
getting-
make a heck of a lot of difference because it's something that we're going to have to pony up for.
If I could add to that, it's a mixed bag. A lot of them are before you for planning purposes. They have not been spent. When you're looking at deconstructing a building, that's obviously after a lot of discussion at many levels of the legislature. And when you're looking at things like reimagining workplace employment education series, that's in advance of the program being started. So wherever there's something that you're authorizing a new program or a new idea or a capital program or any of those things, extending consulting services or any kind of contractual agreements, they're always in advance. So you do have a chance to vote yes or no. Some of the other ones, you're caught in that you have to pay them, such as the 7 disability and terminal pays to the tune of 180. That's part of payroll. That's part of the ongoing trying to staff the sheriff's department while he's missing 11 people over that length of time. So it's a mixed bag. Some of them you're kind of stuck with, but a lot of times you do have the power and the ability to decide thumbs up, thumbs down, whether you want to go ahead with the program.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Randy Brown and then Greg Mezzi.
Yes, Rick, thanks for the report. So is the plan for 2023 to have a similar starting budget of $900,000? Is that something we'll discuss in the budget, or how does that work?
I'll let Lisa address that. It's probably right at the tip of her tongue.
I don't have the figure in front of me, but I think it is higher. It's either somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 higher than this year.
Thanks.
Greg and then Ann Corman.
Deb, I hear what you're saying, and I don't want to get into back and forth. I just think it's good financial stewardship to be knowledgeable on where account balances are. And there's going to be a time potentially in our county where we don't have as strong a fund balance as we do have, and the ability to move $1 million over may be a difficult decision between deconstructing something or limping it along for another year, or some of those decisions that we have to make. So I would hope that while we are strong in a stronger financial position today, we could build the habits that would put us in a better position to make more informed decisions when we're not in such a strong position. That's where I come from.
I just hope we don't get there anytime soon, but that's fair enough, Greg.
Ann Corman and then Lee Shirtliff.
Thank you. I appreciate Ricky providing this information for us. I know it's something that my colleague, Mr. Mezzi, has been asking for a while. And so I would like to see this, more often, perhaps quarterly, so that we can see, how this fund and possibly other funds are doing on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Lee Shirtliff and then Mike Lane.
I don't disagree with anything the previous legislators have said. I would point out, though, that some of the use of the contingency fund is directly related to the fiscal policy that's long been established for our departments, and in contingency is where they have to go to make themselves whole for a variety of unexpected or unbudgeted expenses, and particularly with terminal pay, disability pay, and some of the overtime that's incurred when you have extraordinary situations. So, and I think the last couple of years have resulted in staff overturn that we may not have been accustomed to. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Mike Lane.
I was just going to say, Rick's done a pretty good job over his term of keeping us up to date on the contingency figures, just like he has tonight. It's not the first time we've heard about it this year. And, maybe you want to have a regular quarterly thing, but I suspect that he's actually done about that.
Thank you, Mike.
I do have one comment I wanted to add on Lisa Holmes' projection for next year is at 1.2 million. And I think we increased it for a number of reasons. One of the reasons we talked about many months ago before we started the budget process, that we were going to have to increase it a few $100,000 because a rollover policy has been done away with. And this is a source from where departments have to now come to get things that they would have normally gotten from the rollover at mid-year. So I do see on her slide, her PowerPoint slide, when she presented the budget, it's already been increased for next year to 1.2 million from the 900,000.
Thank you, Rick. Any other questions or comments or discussion? Okay. Lee, do you want to say something? I see it in your eyes.
I threw in the towel on the rollover, but that is a point to be made that there are funds now that will be going back into unexpended fund balance that previously were part of rollover, and maybe the adjustment toward contingency is a logical way to approach that, or make use of that change in fiscal policy. Thank you. But I'm not taking the towel back. I'm leaving it.
Thank you, Lee. Anything else for us tonight, Rick?
That is all I have for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's see here. Next up, we have resolutions to be added or withdrawn from the agenda. Amanda Champion.
Yeah, let's see. Trying to find it. I would like to withdraw resolution K, instructing the Department of Assessment to assess in a 3-year interval, please. Oh, I'd like to withdraw resolution K.
Okay, that has been withdrawn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Deborah Dawson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to offer a member filed resolution to renew the transportation agreement with the City of Ithaca, Cornell University, and Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit, Inc. The resolution was in your red folder, and we just got the latest version of the actual agreement. It was distributed to you just as the meeting started.
Thank
So
you,
I move
Deborah.
that.
Can I have a seconder? Seconded by Greg Mezzi. And we're doing discussion? Or
Vote
roll
to
call.
add it to the agenda.
I'm sorry?
We're going to vote to add it.
We're going to vote. Yep, 10 votes to add it to the agenda. Oh, Yeah, Randy?
So we're voting on accepting the agreement we just got?
We're voting to add this to the agenda. So
Oh, just
after,
okay.
yeah. So we need 10 votes in order to do that.
Okay.
And we will do a roll call.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
13 ayes and 0 noes.
Okay, that passes. We will add it after we go through committee reports on number 13 on our agenda. Thank you all. Now let's go to our consent agenda, resolutions and appointments to be voted on as a group unless any member of the legislature requests that a resolution or appointment be instead included separately and individually as part of the business of standing or special committees. Appointments, advisory board appointments, ID 11099, Youth Services Board, Michael Jordan, Town of Newfield Representative, term expires 12/31/23. Government Operations Committee, Public Information Advisory Board, Elizabeth Thomas at large, term expires December 31st, 2023. Health and Human Services Committee, Resolution A, Budget Adjustment, Tompkins County Office for the Aging, Tax Counseling for the Elderly Program and purchase of a laptop computer, ID 11113. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Resolution B, authorization to execute extensions of snow and ice agreements with the towns in Tompkins County. Highway Department, ID 11147. Government Operations Committee, Resolution C, setting the income limits. Okay. Resolution D, establishing county equalization rates, ID 11106. Resolution E, adoption of regular and supplemental reports of footings and assessment rolls, ID 11105. Budget, Capital and Personnel Committee, Resolution F, scheduling a public hearing on the 2023 Tompkins County budget and the 2023 through 2027 Tompkins County Capital Program, ID 11134. And if we could do a roll call. Or if I could have a mover, please. Moved by Deborah. It's moving ahead. Seconded by Veronica Pillar. And a roll call, please.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
13 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank you. And if we can move on to the standing and special committees reports in motions and resolutions. Health and Human Services Committee, Veronica Pillar, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Health and Human Services Committee met yesterday, September 19th. We had a fairly full agenda, robust discussions, 4 main items. One, we heard a presentation from the folks running Sunflower House. So OAR, URO, and a researcher thereof. This was in the context of them having an over target request in our budget that is in year 2 of a 3-year thing that we're already on board for. For just a little bit of background, they pointed out that Tompkins County has been a leader in decarceration statewide, but still has very disproportionate African-American representation in our jail population, those being sent to prison. And in the population of folks who rebook into jail within a year. So Sunflower Houses, what they're doing is they've got several housing units. Many of you heard about this last year, to provide really solid community and wraparound services for those returning home from incarceration, many of whom are also in recovery for substance abuse. They're also working on research to quantitatively assess the effectiveness of Sunflower House and how well that improves people's social determinants of health, and to actually quantify recidivism rates, which nobody currently is doing in Tompkins County. Second, we heard feedback from department heads about the TIDES proposal. The numerous county departments that might be affected by this answered a whole bunch of questions, which is in a beautiful spreadsheet in the meeting agenda you can look back at. There was no super clear statement, like conclusion of do we want to do this or not, rose to the top. But I think much of this information is being communicated back to the city who is working on this, as we just heard George McGonigal say earlier. And, we'll stay tuned on that. Third, we had a bit of an update about the concept of mental health crisis stabilization centers. I think in between, not in an official meeting, Mike Sigler had arranged a meeting with someone from Dutchess County to talk about their crisis stabilization center. And so we heard a report back on that, and I have totally misplaced my notes. But one of the comments that stood out to me was Frank Krupa mentioned that many people who would go to this would be like an acute walk-in anytime mental health center, like crisis center, many people who would be served by this currently go to our emergency room, which he described as the most expensive healthcare that we offer. So it could be helpful to potentially spend a lot of money, as Mike emphasized it would take to move away from that. And finally, we had tasked the public health, mental health, soon to be whole health. They rolled out their new branding name department with giving some recommended funds. And the main recommendation there was to create an opiate task force that would be comprised of several key stakeholders and figure out how to use the opiate settlement funds that we're getting. And they're also in the process of gathering more data about data and information about this, including meeting with other counties that already have an opiate task force, as I think Lisa mentioned in a report back. So one thing we as a legislature may have to decide, but this is not coming formally, is where does that task force live? How do we create it? More updates to come on that as well. Our next meeting is going to be Monday, October 17th at 3 p.m. And we have one resolution, but does anyone have questions?
So I just wanted to intervene here. I was actually contacted by Dan yesterday in regards to naming a task force. And we had a conversation on the phone in which we talked about who would be on that task force. The idea was that we would have 3 legislators, and I asked Randy Brown as well as Travis Brooks if they would join the task force with me. And then I have some calls out to some local people in our area, one being AJ, who was the mother of her son was lost to an overdose. There's another gentleman locally who I'm not going to name his name because I have a call pending for him. I have reached out to Reach Medical as well so that we can actually have someone who is a peer. And there is another phone call that is out to OER for someone who is also who has dealt with the system locally. So right now, I believe there will be 7 to 8 members of the task force. And depending, I think once I have those members, I'm supposed to turn it in to Lisa and Frank. And they're going to organize meetings and tell us where we need to go with that.
Awesome. Thank you, Shauna. A lot of progress in the last 24 hours.
24 hours. Yep. Any questions for Veronica or comments or discussion?
If not, I'd like to move Resolution G, appropriation from contingent fund and authorization to accept rental supplement program grant, Department of Social Services, ID 11072.
Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Rich John. Any questions, comments, discussion?
We're getting money. It's good.
Okay. Kit is here. If, Kit, would you be able to explain this resolution for us?
Sure. So we're really excited about this money coming to us from OTDA. This is a new rental supplement or a new rental program that OTDA is rolling out. We anticipate this to be an ongoing program. It's a program that we're getting, I think it's $460,000 roughly. We actually have received that allocation for this year, and we're hoping to spend, we're being encouraged to spend as much as we can because we're starting so late in the year, about 3/4 of our allocation, in the end of this year. However, money will be available for next year. And so we're asking for local funds because this program can pay up to 85% of the fair market for rent. But when people can't meet that, many counties are supplementing with those local funds to bring people up to, the program can pay for 100% of the fair market rent. And so when people can't pay that, we're asking for that 15% to supplement up to that 100%. We can pay up to 85%. So it's great money for the community. Certainly we have seen tremendous utilization of ESG monies, STEP monies, sorry for the background noise, all of that money coming into our community and being utilized over the last year or so for people that have been facing eviction during the pandemic.
Thank you, Kit. Any questions for Kit? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane.
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
13 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank you. That passes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kit. Anything else, Veronica?
Nope, that's all.
Okay, thank you. Facilities and Infrastructure Committee, Mike Lane, Chair.
Oh, thank you. We met on September 15th. Had a lot of discussion about a lot of very interesting things, I think. From Dwight Mengel in our transportation planning, we passed a resolution to accept the $8.7 million of federal funding for the new buses for TCAT. I think that's 8 buses that we're getting, and they're going to be electric. So we're moving toward lower carbon emissions, certainly with TCAT. The other thing that Dwight did for us was to give us a little history of how Tompkins County came into the business of operating a bus system, starting with the concept of what we called TomTran. It was Tompkins County Transit, which was the idea of having some rural bus service for Tompkins County. Back then, in the 80s, there was Cornell Transit, there was Ithaca Transit, but there was no rural transit. And starting with some grants that were made available through the Appalachia Regional Commission, he told us that we started having a bus system that eventually grew to be consolidated with the other 2 bus services in the county, along with Gadabout. It was very interesting. Hopefully he sent everybody the photographs that he'd collected over the years of various buses. Some of them seem old to look at now, but they were modern buses at the time. And Dwight has been there like from day one in the planning department, and then became our transportation planner. So there's no one knows more about it than he. And we hope to have a subsequent lesson from him on about how we got into the actual TCAT consolidation. From the airport, Roxanne told us that what she would really like to do is to have a strategic plan for a full-blown strategic plan for the airport, which is going to cost some money. And she's basically asking us to consider funding that. She's in the process of receiving some estimates of what the cost would be from various consulting firms. And I think she had a lot of support from our committee. And we will be no doubt bringing an over target request for that legislature during the EBC meetings. Highway Department had some good news for us about Game Farm Road. As you know, that's been controversial. Jeff Smith told us that he was able to advance his work plan. Instead of doing the work on Game Farm Road, which would be the sculpting down of the vertical curve so that the sight distance and stopping distance was better for this crossing of the connection of the two trails between the town of Ithaca and the town of Dryden. He very much wanted us to know that the reason he was able to advance this and have that work get started this year was because of his employees. Their normal work has gone very, very well this summer. They've been able to have that work done because of the good weather, but also the real effort by our highway employees. And that left some time before they get into some other projects for the fall that they were able to slot this in. So hopefully that's going to make people in the two towns very, very happy, and folks that want to use this connected trail. The discussion about the Red House, which I promised you, we were joined in our committee by Dan Klein and Greg Mezzi. Thanks to them for coming. I can't report to you that we have any recommendation yet about what to do with it. We heard from a member of the public about it, concerned about the condition. We've talked among ourselves. Some think we should hold off doing anything with it. Some think it should be sold. Some think maybe it should be taken down and deconstructed. We're aware of the issue of the historic district, and we have to keep that in forefront as well, because we know that's important to the people, particularly in the city. We will be meeting some more on this. We did not pass the resolutions that were brought to us. We simply tabled them, and we'll be talking more at another meeting. Those are pretty much the highlights. Randy, was there anything else that we talked about you'd like to mention?
Yeah, just that a real reminded us that it was well over $1 million just to rehab the Red House so it could be used by us to get it to code. So that kind of put us back a little bit. And that one thing I liked about what Roxanne mentioned about the strategic plan was that she was reaching out to entities we've never worked with before from other airports that are similar, as opposed to the same people we've worked with in the past. Not that they did a bad job, but just to look at other people doing different things. So.
Rich, John, Amanda, and then Mike Ziegler.
Thanks, Mike. Is there a date for that further meeting about the Red House?
No, we haven't set that yet. We will.
Okay. Thank you.
Amanda.
I would highly recommend folks watch the F&I meeting, particularly when we were getting our history lesson in Tomtran because there was a beautiful picture of Mr. Mike Lane in front of the old Tomtran in about 1985. So check it out.
That was the very first trip of Tomtran that went out through Dryden to TC3. There was a group of us. I was mayor of the village at the time and was invited to by Bev Livesey, who was on the legislature then, along with President Hugh Bahar of the very first president of Tompkins Cortland Community College was part of the group then. But thanks for mentioning that.
Mike Sigler?
Mine's more of a request, actually. Somebody wrote us when we were talking about the other building, the Baker building. And it stuck with me because it was a good question, actually. It was, how did we let the building get that bad? And so my request of the F&I committee is kind of in regards to the Red House, like the roof, foundation, basement, sealing it up for winter, pest control. Like, how much would that cost? Because if we let it go, then there is no decision to be made, then it will be deconstructed, or then it will be knocked down, or whatever the case may be. So I hope that maybe you guys will take a look at that, because obviously roof and foundation are the number, 1 and 2. And then sealing the rest of the building from winter is big. And then obviously pests will just eat everything. So anyway, thanks. I hope you'll consider that.
Thanks.
You're right, Mike.
Ann Corman?
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to clarify 2 points. I think the picture of Mike Lane and the Tom Tran was 1983, not 1985, if I'm remembering correctly. And also just wanted to clarify the resolution for the sale of the Red House was withdrawn, not tabled. And yes, if we're not looking at selling that property or doing something else, I agree with Mike Sigler that we need to figure out what that investment is going to be to keep it through the winter, which I think is going to be pretty significant when you talk about painting, asbestos, roof, all kinds of things, winterizing it.
Thank you, Ann. Greg Mesner?
Yeah, I would say that if we're going to look at a piece of the puzzle, we should look at the whole puzzle first, right? That's why many people put the picture of the puzzle out as they're putting the pieces together. I think preservation of that house over the winter is one question. I also think there could potentially be a question of sale or disposal, right? So before we just put more money at the issue, I think we really need to look holistically. I understand it's in a historic district. I understand that there are tough choices to make. I know that it's important to many in the community to preserve many of those historic structures. I also think that we have an obligation to look at what's in the greatest benefit of the entire community. And that's something that we can do. I'd like to understand what our abilities are based on the fact that it is in a historic district, what we can and cannot do. And so I think as we're looking at the whole discussion, it needs to be a holistic discussion, because I would not be in favor of just limping something along without really knowing what the plan is, because I think it's a waste of money, because we could spend all that money and then ultimately decide that we want to deconstruct it or salvage it in some way or sell it. So I think it's a good point, but I do think we need to look really holistically at this. And to Amanda's point, outside of the fabulous pictures of Mike and the history lesson that we got, there was a lot of really good discussion around the Red House. So I would encourage you, as much as I encourage you to watch Geo, it's important to watch F&I as well. So tune in.
Thank you, Greg. Okay.
I have one resolution. Resolution H to amend.
Oh, wait, there's one more question from Lee Shirtliff.
Okay.
Not so much a question, but I fear the conversation is centered on one piece of this puzzle that Greg has referred to. And I come back to preserving options for the county in the broad sense of county facilities and future projects to establish a center of government or what have it. what have you. And my opposition to the resolution that day had to do, I just want it out for the rest of the board, that it had to do with preserving a wide range of options for the county, looking forward at a bigger picture on facilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
I
Okay,
don't expect there will be any shortage of opinions on this.
Not in this room.
So I'll go to resolution H to amend the funding agreement between the county of Tompkins and the town of Ulysses for replacement of Cemetery Road Bridge over Trumansburg Creek, and I so move.
seconded by Ann Corman.
This is simply to pay the rest of the money that the county had agreed to pay. Town of Ulysses had taken on this project for a county bridge over on a town road, and we'd agreed to pay their expenses because it moved up our funding more quickly.
Thank you, Mike. And Randy Brown?
Yeah, I just had a question. Maybe Mike answered it. Is it typical for the county to pick up the entire local share? Is that?
No, because it's these bridge projects, Dryden and Ulysses, were money given to the towns for these bridges on county roads. It's never happened before, but it advanced our bridge construction, which was a good thing for us. We would have had to pay these expenses ourselves. And we simply said, it's not fair to hold the towns to that extra money, the 5% local, for example, because we would have had to pay that. And now we're not even have to pay for the whole bridge. So we agreed a long time ago that we would reimburse the towns for their costs here. So it's not typical, but it wasn't a typical grant program from the state. Normally they grant the money to the county.
Any other questions or comments, discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison, Henry Grandison,
I think that's.
Yes. Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
It's 13 ayes, 0 noes.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Mike. Next, Government Operations Committee, Amanda Champion Chair.
Thank you. Let's see, I don't think I have a report because we have not met since the last meeting, but I do have some very exciting resolutions. And I guess I'll start with the one that we pulled off of the consent agenda. And that is Resolution C, setting the income limits for persons, I think it's supposed to be persons with disabilities and limited incomes and persons 65 years of age or older with limited incomes, real property tax exemptions, ID 11108. And I would move that.
Oh, thank you. And seconded by Deb Dawson.
And I pulled it. So I'll just explain why. I just think that as we move forward with our 2023 budget, something like this that could potentially impact our budget, we should take a look at and just be sure, based on what we learned from Jay Franklin, that this will have a minimal impact on our 2023 budget. And I know Jay couldn't be here
Yeah, Jay's here.
earlier, but I know he's here now. So Jay, take it away.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry for being late. Not really, but I'd rather watch a soccer game than you all, especially when my son's playing.
We understand.
So yes, I took a look at what would have happened to our 2022 taxes if we had put this in place last year. And, you know, it is a pretty minimal effect. It would add about $4.40 to the median house's tax bill. So, it doesn't affect your budget. You're still going to generate the same amount of money, but the tax base is smaller, and then that is spread out through the rest of the tax base. So, but it will also add about 412 people that would benefit from this increase exemption limits.
Okay, any other questions, comments, discussion for Jay or Deborah or Amanda? Mike Lane?
Just that I think that's so important that we have this exemption for our elderly.
I don't contest that, Mike. I just wanted to be sure we all had an opportunity to understand what impact it might have.
I understand.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
13 ayes, 0 nos.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, with your permission, I'd like to skip ahead to resolution, what is that, L? Accepting the recommendations of the Tompkins County Independent Redistricting Commission, establishing a 16-member legislature with appropriately revised district lines and adoption of local law number blank of 2022, a local law amending chapter 28 of the Charter and Code election districts.
Okay, seconded by Greg Muzzy.
Great. Well, I'm not sure what else there is to say at this point. We've been through this for many months. We discussed this a couple months ago, or a month or so ago. The legislature voted to send the Independent Redistricting Commission report proposal back to the commission. They did meet again and voted amongst themselves to send us the same proposal back. I would like to make an amendment to add in some new language, which I emailed you all and was also in your red folder. So I guess, can I make that amendment? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's 2 whereas clauses. One just says that the legislature had requested that the Independent Redistricting Commission re-examine alternative proposals. And then the second one says that they did reconvene and looked at alternatives, but ultimately unanimously adopted to reaffirm the proposed map 16B.3. So that would be my amendment to add those.
Okay, is that friendly to the seconder?
Yes.
Okay. And let's, we need to vote on that?
Not if it's friendly.
Okay. Questions, comments? I mean, we've talked about this for hours, but I'd love to have Mike Lane talk a little bit more about it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I really want to thank the commission for taking seriously the resolution returning the report for suggestions to it. I think they did take a strong look. I think the process here continues to be excellent that we have. I can't say I agree with the outcome, but that's the way it works. When you share power, which is what we have done here, instead of keeping this as our own decision, as most counties do, about redistricting. I think that sometimes you end up with things that you didn't expect, or which may be better, may not be better. I do think we probably will be the only county, I hope I'm wrong, but I think we're the only county that probably will be going up in the number of legislators. Most counties are going down. I don't know how many have an even number of legislators. I would be surprised if there are very many. And yet we will have an even number for another 10 years. The problems that we have seen in the past will arise because there will be divided votes, 50-50. It will now take, with 16 members, it will take 9 people to pass a resolution rather than 8, which it always has been 8 from the time the legislature was formed as a Board of Representatives. I do think that probably we need to look at the criteria that we suggest to the independent commission in the charter again, not tomorrow, but we need to do it eventually. And for all those reasons, I will be voting for this tonight. But I do hope that it does not hamstring our legislature in the future and that things will be good for the next time.
Thank you, Mike. Randy Brown and then Deborah Dawson.
Yes, thank you. I'll be voting against it. I think it's a waste of money. I don't see the value in adding 2 legislators. I appreciate the work they did. I think you're going to find by 2025 that's taking place, the 5% is going to be out of whack right away. And we're going to be dealing with that for 10 more years after that. And I don't think it's fair. So that's why I'm voting against it.
Thank you, Randy. Deborah Dawson.
I'll be supporting this, but I wanted to suggest to Mike that there may be a reason why we're unusual in that we're adding persons to our legislature. As you know, I'm in the process of selling my house, and my real estate agent said he had read something in Market Watch very recently that every place in upstate New York is losing population except for 3 areas. And Ithaca is one of the 3. So we're actually gaining population. So that may be, that's what he said. So that may be.
Well, I don't disagree, but why would that make a difference?
Well,
You simply divide the number of people in the districts.
Well, yeah, you can do that, or you can make smaller districts so that people have more direct representation. I'm just suggesting, I don't want to have an argument about it. I was just offering it as a possible explanation.
Thank you, Deb. Anyone else like to speak on this? Greg Mezzi?
I couldn't resist. I just wanted to point out that a vote of 7 or 7 or 8 to 8 is a motion that fails. It's not an impasse. It's really only at leadership and our own internal rules where that sort of tie creates a challenge. But when it comes to an actual motion on the floor, if it is equal votes on both sides, the motion does not carried, it fails. So just wanted to point that out for everybody. Hopefully we won't have any major pieces of legislation where we have some unforeseen issue, but based on our rules, we shouldn't see that with an equal number of people. So I also thought this was a really interesting process. I really appreciate the fact that as much as I disagreed with it, that Mike and other colleagues pushed back, because it was really interesting to sort of step back into the redistricting committee and hear some of the rationale. And I think that was beneficial to the process. So appreciate them for doing a little bit extra work, but ultimately I think we have a great result.
Thank you, Greg. Travis Brooks.
You know, it was explained to me that in theory, by spreading minorities out amongst different districts, it would disenfranchise their vote. And so looking at this would be an issue, because if you kept us spread out, you would disenfranchise us for 20 years. And now for this year, Black folks have had a representative and a few others that have lived in their districts, right? So Lindeman, Overlook hasn't been in District 1. So there were members of this body that were responsible for their voices, responsible to bring their voices and their needs in front of the rest of the body. When you talk about disenfranchisement and you say, we're going to take all of you and we're going to put you with one district, that's disenfranchisement. That gives one vote for minorities, low-income folks, and this county, right? Others can, vote in favor of, but they're not responsible for those voices. So to me, we did the opposite of what was supposed to be done. And we disenfranchised the minority voices even more by putting all low-income housing in one district.
Thank you, Travis. Amanda Champion.
I'm just going to push back on that a little bit, Travis, because Linderman Creek is currently in my district and it's low-income housing, and it will continue to be in the same district that I would potentially represent next time.
I apologize, Amanda, all but one.
Yeah.
Sigler has one too.
Yeah. So
I think Deborah
they're-
might have one too.
Yeah, I think they're a little more spread out than.
Annie has one too.
Yeah.
Right.
point out that
Lee
we
Shirtliff
also
also,
has-
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And my district will when the Green Street development is done.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this resolution, discussion? Okay, let's roll call vote.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
No.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
No.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes,
11 ayes, 2 noes.
that passes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to Greg Potter and Bill Troy and Brittany, who all were staff members on the commission, and plenty of other folks put in lots of time as well. And then I have more resolutions. So I'll move resolution I, making a negative declaration of environmental significance in relation to resolution number blank of 2022, authorizing the sale of Fall Creek Road tax parcel number 2-1-2 to the village of Freeville.
Moved by Amanda, seconded by, oh, which one? Mike Lane. Okay. And would you like to explain, Amanda?
Yeah, sure. So Darby offered to be here, but I said, I think we could probably get through it, and she didn't need to spend her time here. This is a property that was going to be foreclosed on, did not pay their taxes, would have gone to auction, but we withheld it from auction to sell it to the village. And this first resolution is just declaring a negative declaration of environmental significance.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion? I see none. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
13 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank you. That passes.
All right. And then the next one is actually authorizing the sale of Fall Creek Road tax parcel number 2-1-2 to the village of Freedom. And I'll move that.
Okay, Amanda moves. Mike, would you like to second this one as well? Mike Lane seconds. And pretty self-explanatory here.
Yeah, I mean, just same as the previous,
Okay.
same parcel.
Randy Brown, question?
Yeah, I was just curious, how was the
Comments?
value determined? And maybe Jay would know that if he's here, but is that
It's what we do is that whatever the back taxes are owed, that's what we sell it off as. However, in the case of municipalities, we sell it at half that price.
Thanks.
That's him.
Any other questions, comments, discussion? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
13 ayes, 0 nos.
Thank
Glad the
you.
dog approves.
Somebody's trying to say no.
The dog says yes.
Anything else for us, Amanda?
Nope.
Any other questions for Amanda? Greg Mezzi?
We did pull resolution K, which was passed through committee. I'm just wondering if Jay would be open to having his memo that he sent to the legislature shared in the minutes as part of the rationale behind pulling that resolution, or will it be rediscussed at?
We're going to have more discussion at GO about
Okay,
it.
so we'll have to rediscuss. I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that that just didn't die.
Yeah, well, yes,
Okay.
we'll discuss.
Ann Corman?
Thank you. I just wanted to add on to what Travis Brooks was saying earlier, that in the, as far as the redistricting, the overlook apartments, which are low income based, are income based, they would be moved from the district that is currently 5, which I currently represent, to the District 1. So that those are the apartments I believe that he might be talking about. So they would be moved under the configuration, which I also don't agree with.
Okay. Thank you, Annie. And moving on to Planning, Development, and Environmental Quality Committee, Ann Corman, Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have not met since last time. But let me first go over we have a resolution, and then I'll go over what's going to be on our agenda for next time. We have an agenda on, or I'm sorry, a resolution on packet page 65. And that is the appropriation from contingent fund to cover additional expenses at the new offices for the Tompkins County Office of Workforce Development. If I could move that.
Thank you, Annie. If I could have a seconder, please. Seconded by Deborah Dawson.
And as some folks might remember, they moved a few months ago, and they're needing some additional funds to change the network for the offices and their computer room, and new phones and some signage to identify their department over there.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments, discussion for Annie? Okay, I see none. Let's vote. Roll call, please.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar, Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
We stepped away for the moment.
12 ayes and 0 nos.
Thank you. Anything else, Annie?
Yes, we are going to meet again this coming Monday on September 26th at 1:30. And the agenda is already drawn up. So thanks to Brittany and Taylor for doing that. And that our agenda includes the establishing of funding sources for the Recycling and Solid Waste Center. So we have a resolution on that we'll be talking about. Also, we're going to get an update on their skin replacement. And we also will be talking about a resolution to support the Clean Water, Clean Air, and Green Jobs Environmental Bond Act. And lastly, we'll have a resolution on the agenda to establish a task force to review the existing relationship between Tompkins County and the Ithaca Area Development Agency. And that's it.
Thank you, Anne. Any questions for Anne? Comments? Okay, thank you. Next is the Community Recovery Fund Advisory Committee. Lee Shirtliff, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Sean. Dan Klein was unable to be with us tonight, but as is a good habit that Dan has, he's provided me with comprehensive notes and for the Community Recovery Fund. Just to let you know, there was an informational session held on September 14th geared towards not-for-profit organizations. And the recording of that meeting is on the Tompkins County government page under the Community Recovery Fund. There will be an in-person information session at the Tompkins County Public Library on the 23rd at 10 in the morning. There'll also be a Zoom session, information session geared towards small businesses on September 28th at noon. And for those that would like to participate in the small business Zoom session, they will need to register in advance. The recording will also be posted on the county website. The next committee meeting for community recovery will be on Monday, October 3rd at 10:30 in the morning. And just a reminder for everybody, the applications deadline is October 30th.
31st.
31st, okay. Thank you. But applications are due by October 15th for those who would like to have a review and feedback on their draft applications before the final submission by the 31st. So if there are organizations out there, if they'd like some advice on finalizing that document, we would recommend it be in by October 15th. So they have an opportunity to enhance that. The committee will meet 3 times in November, at least that's the plan. And there is a note that Dan does want to let you all be aware of, is that the level of interest in the program appears to be much higher than we may have anticipated. And given the participation that they've had thus far and the amount of feedback, and our contract with the MRB group was working with us, was structured in such a manner that we're paying certain amounts for each application and each award that's reviewed and each award that's granted. And the caution that we have is that we may need to step back and allocate additional funding to administer the grant program based on the heavy volume that we're looking at. So more to follow, but may sound like bad news, but I think the good news is there's strong community interest in this, and there are a lot of organizations and businesses that are looking at it.
Great, thank you, Lee. Any questions, comments for Lee Shirtliff? Discussion? Ann Corman?
This is something I was thinking about later, and I know it would, look at additional funds, but maybe this is already part of that. Just thinking about for the committee that when we meet to review the applications, just hoping that we have some in-depth training or some guidance for how to review these grants appropriately.
Okay.
I'll convey that request, and I think that that's a strong suit of the MRB group, from what I understand, in the manner that they will be packaging these and providing the preliminary ratings and to the committee. So I'm not sure how extensive the review was going to be. Our discussion at the committee meeting was that we weren't going to. We were going to allow the consulting group to do the significant ratings on those, and I don't know that it's envisioned that we were going to re-rate them as a group ourselves, or.
But it's definitely a possibility. We have 9 hours allocated so far just to review the grants. So it was said that we could change the rating. They're just doing preliminary, so.
I think we'll have to probably ask MRB for clarification because I mean, right now they think that there are going to be 150 applicants and 9 hours, you know, I mean, we think about our budget time, you know, we spend 9 hours easily in a week. And we hit just a few departments each day. So I'm not sure it's feasible that we're going to go one by one, debate the merits of every single one. I'm just not sure that's going to be feasible. Deborah?
Yeah, it was my understanding that there were certain rating criteria that were objective.
Yeah.
And that MRB would be presenting us with scores or ratings based on those objective criteria. And then there would be a criterion that was more subjective in terms of what we as a county wanted to accomplish. And that would be the province of the review committee and the legislature as a whole.
That's not what I recall.
Well,
But so it would be good to get clarification on that.
Yeah, we could do that. Lee, do you mind reaching out to MRB?
Not at all.
Okay.
I will do that through the committee chair, Dan.
That's great. Well, Dan's going to be gone for 10 days.
yeah,
You know what? I don't mind reaching out to MRB tomorrow and getting clarification on that. And we could circulate it to the full legislature because I'm sure we're all curious. Does that sound all right? Okay.
We may want to summarize that process and distribute it among the legislature so that everybody's aware of how this is going to roll out moving forward, or how it's envisioned to roll out.
Yeah. I'm sure Dan would have the answer if he was just here.
Having fun now.
He is having fun. Okay, any other questions? Comments, discussion for Lee? Okay, thank you, Lee. Budget, Capital and Personnel Committee, Deborah Dawson, Chair.
yes, we met earlier this month and we passed several resolutions that have been already voted upon by this body, but the one that remains is Resolution N. Resolution recommending bonding to complete Phase 1 of Green Facilities Project 2023, ID 11128, and I move that.
Okay, can I have a seconder? Seconded by Rich John.
Yeah, this is a resolution that passed through F&I in order to accommodate the speed with which the cost of things are going up. We had a budget projection for Phase 1. Now, admittedly, certain things were added to Phase 1, but overall, the massive increase in cost has to do with supply chain and the general issues we're dealing with inflation. And our facilities people and our chief sustainability officer urged us to move forward so that we could get this contract nailed down before prices went up any higher. And that is what this resolution does. It allows us to bond for that additional cost.
Thank you, Deborah. Randy Brown.
Yes, we did talk about this in the F&I meeting and I voted for it to move it forward. But I brought up the issue of the 25-year bonding. And from everything I've read, equipment of this nature doesn't last 25 years. It's closer to 20. So I just felt that 25 years was too long. And it's not very conservative because you're going to have to replace it sooner than that. So I just felt 20 years was a better number. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mike Sigler?
I just want to quickly say that while I'm not sure about Phase 2 and Phase 3, Phase 1 is kind of like the low hanging fruit in here. That's why I'm voting for it. I think the ROI is still there. I don't think, it saves us energy, which means energy is going up in price as we've been rating. So I think the ROI is still pretty good. So that's why I'm voting for it. It's an upset.
Thanks, Mike. I will say, to address Randy's point, my understanding is that when our finance department decides how long they're going to bond for something, it's tied into categories that are have set useful lives, because I'm not sure that we're allowed to bond for longer than the useful life of what we're bonding for.
You know what? Rick Snyder is here too, and I think here
Maybe
we
you can
go.
Clarify this.
Hi, Rick.
for
Do you
us.
mind clarifying for us?
Yes, Deborah's right. When we bond for any project, the engineers and the bond counsel and the financial advisor meet and decide what the useful life is of the project. And like in the green facilities bond last year and in the one coming up in 2023, they're divided into components. And some of it is with a useful life of 10 years. And the term of those bonds are floated for 10 years and others are for 15 years. And that's how it was done with the last bond issue. And that's how it'll be done with the next one. So they go by the useful life. That's it.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Rick. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
13 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank you, everyone. Can I add something? I know that some of this is certainly F&I's province, but eventually the cost of shoring up our airport's operating budget is going to come through BCP. And I know that our chair has reached out to at least one of our community partners and asked for some monetary support for the operating deficits that our airport's going to be facing over the next couple of years as the airline industry across the board tries to recover. The response of our community partners to formal and informal requests for assistance has been disappointing. And one of the justifications for that has been, well, when I've tried to fly out of Ithaca, my flights have been canceled or the schedule's not suitable to my needs. And I want to urge people, anyone who's listening, and for those of us here, to consider that there's an overall crisis in the airline industry that's impacting the availability of flights here in Ithaca. And that is something that is not in any way under the control of our airport management. And they should not be penalized or blamed for that. The real crisis that we're facing is how do we keep our airport supported as we move through this larger industry crisis so that at the end of the day, when the airlines are able to staff enough planes to put flights in and out of Ithaca on a more amenable schedule, we still have an airport that's open and functioning and can receive those flights. So to the extent that you can do any outreach to our community partners, please remind them of the difference between the problems that are attributable to the industry and the problems that are peculiar to our particular airport. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. I went ahead and decided not to do a break because I feel like we're so close to the end. Is that all right? We just finished the marathon here. Okay. Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee, Henry Grandison Chair.
Yes, we've not met since the last legislative meeting, and in the words of Jonathan Woods, I have no report.
Okay. Thank you, Henry. Public Safety Committee, Rich John Chair.
Thank you. The Public Safety Committee met on September 15th. We had a good meeting. We talked about several different matters, but we had a presentation from Department of Emergency Services on ambulance service in the county. And we had several guests attend and speak to us on this issue from various towns. As you all know, ambulance service is not traditionally, it has not traditionally been a function of county government, that this has been managed at the town and village level and of course in the city of Ithaca. and by private providers, Bang's Ambulance. We have 3 ambulance providers in the county. There's Trumansburg, there's Dryden, and Groton all run ambulance services. The key takeaways from the presenters was that the system is working. However, it's really getting stretched. This is not a unique problem to our county. This is happening across the state and I assume across the country. There was a fairly lengthy discussion about whether this was a response or should be a responsibility of the county. And the argument was made that we have in the New York State Constitution requirements for there to be a sheriff, for there to be fire departments, and that the county has responsibility for a fire coordinator. Essentially, the sheriff is the police coordinator. And those roles are there because those are considered essential services. Ambulance service, by really any argument is an essential service as well, but has just historically not been treated as such for purposes of county government. And the pitch from the visitors to our meeting was that we really should be looking at it that way. And to make sure that there is adequate coverage. There was information provided on response times in various parts of the county. Some parts of the county are pretty well served. Others, you're seeing fairly substantial delays. And this is a critical element in whether somebody has a successful response to their emergency is how soon you can get the emergency medical services there. The request made was for the county to consider addition of a fly car to all the existing ambulance and emergency services that are now in place. The fly car would not do transport, but provide immediate emergency medical services in areas of the county where an ambulance can't get to right away. After extensive discussion on what this would mean, and this would be a pretty big decision for the county. This would be a lot of money. When you say one fly car, you're really talking about at least 5 people because you would need to staff it if you're talking about 24/7. If you're only staffing it for some parts of the work week or the week and hours of the week, you might be able to do less than that. But even there, this would be a fairly substantial financial commitment from the county. And it's complicated by the fact that there's volunteer services in place now that are providing these services. We would want to supplement the existing services in Dryden, Groton, Trumansburg, and Bangs, and the volunteers. So there would be an enhancement. It wouldn't be a replacement. We would not just want to transfer this cost to the county and not end up with substantially better services. So it's fairly complicated. The end point of the conversation was a request to our county administrator to consider a EMS coordinator position and to give us some sense of what that would look like. This, it's possible, would come to us in this budget cycle. But given the current state of our ambulance services and where we may want to go, it might make sense for us to think about it this year. It's a pretty big decision, but that may be coming back to the full legislature, just so you all know. And that came out of our Public Safety Committee. We also had a discussion about our visit to the Shenango County Jail. And I want to thank the people over there who hosted us and to the sheriff who brought us over there. Mike Sigler and Arel Lamaro and I went and toured their pod system. It is a vastly different arrangement for a jail than we have here in our jail that was commissioned in 1986 and is really not optimal for a lot of different reasons, including the additional staffing needed to cover it and the overall look and feel of the jail. The Shenango County Jail has high ceilings, it has skylights, it lets in a lot of light, and it's configured in a way that you can classify people within the same space but keep them separate. So you maximize the use of the space in a way that we really cannot do. That discussion will be ongoing at public safety on whether there's some appetite for making a recommendation and passing it on to facilities and infrastructure. We also, in between our meeting, I wanted to mention the crisis stabilization unit discussion we had with a representative, I think it was Dutchess County, that you mentioned from HHS. It was a really good discussion. And, you know, we'll see where that proceeds. One other item, I'll go back to the ambulance issue, was we passed a resolution at NISAC Public Safety Committee endorsing some New York State legislation that would allow the creation of special improvement districts on a countywide basis for ambulance service. I know that there's also discussion in Albany of trying to implement some sort of CHIPS model to bring state money in to help fund more robust ambulance service. Where that all goes, I don't know, but there's a lot going on right now in that area. I finally report that our jail population is at 45 with 2 board outs today. There was some recent activity that led to some new arrests. And the Public Safety Committee will be meeting again on October 20th at 3 o'clock. I do have one resolution, and this is document ID 11139, establishing the Tompkins County Community Justice Center Advisory Board. And I would be moving the version that was in your red folder because there was a discussion at Public Safety on how the appointments were going to work, since this is a dual advisory board between the city and the county. Some further changes were made. We passed it at Public Safety, recognizing that there was going to have to be some further discussion on that point, which did occur. I don't see Mona Lita with us right now, but Lisa is here, and what's that?
I'm just promoting her to panelist.
Oh, okay. And unfortunately, I was in the car, so I don't know if there were any further changes that were made to the advisory board recommendation. But I see Mona Lita is with us. Maybe she could talk to us for a minute on what changes are made from the time I was at Public Safety to now.
Hi, good evening, everyone. The changes that were made to the document where we went over the terms and conditions of the document. So we updated those. What else? We also went over the appointment process, the how someone is appointed. So we broke it down in more detailed information in regards to the number of appointees that the city would have, the number of appointees that the county would have. So that was a clarification need last week that was identified. So we went back in, and when I say we, it's the voting members of the development committee went back in and looked at it, broke it down a little bit more specific. So that's the information that is in the folder the red folder today.
And I moved, did we get a second?
Rich moves. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Veronica Pillar and Amanda Champion.
Yeah, are we on the discussion part now?
Yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to bring up something that's not so much about the content, but about process, and that, because you guys know I all love that sort of thing. Actually, it's not really process, but so as I was reading this, and I apologize to everyone that I did not read this much earlier, but you may or may not know that Greg and Dan and I have been working with Kathy and Brittany to revise our advisory board policy. And you should have gotten an email today that policy is being sent out to department heads and is going through the administration process of being revised. So and the point of all of that is to make our clerks' lives easier. They have whatever, 45 advisory boards that they have to deal with all the members, all the comings and goings and the term limits and the vacancies, and they have a very antiquated system. So we're revising that for them. So all that is to say that when I read through this, there were some things that were inconsistent with what our policy is hopefully going to be in terms of the terms of service and attendance. So Shauna and I spoke with Mona earlier today. Thank you for chatting. And we also did make, I believe, just one change. So we talked about the terms of service, and it actually will comply with our new policy in that, so the members can serve for 2 terms. But if if somebody wants to serve further, they either need to come to the legislature and say, I would like to serve again, or they need to be off of the board for 2 years. So that is spelled out in here. That will comply with what our new policy will say. But we did add on page 5 of the new copy, under term of service, we added exclusive of impacted stakeholder agencies at the very beginning. And that means that the Ithaca Police Chief, the sheriff, the district attorney, and those first 7 folks who are going to be on this board, whoever is in that position or whoever is appointed by that position, they won't have a term limit. They're, the sheriff will just be on the board, whoever the sheriff is. So those folks would be exempt from the term limit. I know I'm getting into the weeds, but I wanted to make it very clear. So that's the first part. The second part is that this attendance policy that is in this document will not be in compliance with our future county policy. We talked about that a little bit today and why it would be that way. That's not something that's going to affect our clerks terribly much. So we kind of thought, well, we'll just leave it, see how it goes. The chair of this board will have to, keep an eye on attendance. And if it becomes a problem, then we might want to get it to be in compliance with our county policy. So I know that was a lot of out of context stuff, but I've been thinking a lot about advisory boards, and I really want to make our clerks' lives easier with some of these very small things. So I think that's all.
Okay, I have Rich and then Mike.
So Amanda, you're satisfied with
Yes.
as it sits today?
Yes.
I think it's important that we get this done and get moving with setting up the advisory board. And of course, it's more complicated because we're doing this jointly with the city.
Right.
But if there are further changes coming out of your committee to try to get to a uniform set of advisory board bylaws, and certainly we can try to get there.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Mike Lane.
Just that I would urge everyone to look at this proposed policy changes that Amanda is talking about. It's basically mandating to our advisory boards term limits. And I want you to take a look at that. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, and I want to make sure that everyone is looking at the correct information. It was in your red folders. It was also emailed out to everyone. And these changes also did pass with the city with Laura Lewis. It was voted on 3-1, so it did pass within the group. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's do a roll call.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shirtliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black.
Yes.
13 ayes, 0 noes.
And that's my report.
Thank you, Rich. Now, if we could, or actually, are there any questions for Rich John and Chair of Public Safety? I see none. Let's move on to individual member filed resolution. Can I have, Deborah, would you like to bring that forward?
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to move resolution to renew the transportation agreement with the City of Ithaca, Cornell University, and Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit, Inc.
Okay, can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Lee Shirtliff.
Okay, so we seem to have considerably advanced the ball over the last couple of weeks. I didn't receive until about 5 o'clock this afternoon the red line copy that was distributed to all of you. However, I will say the blue changes are changes that were furnished to us earlier this week by Cornell's attorney and reflect the understanding of the city, Cornell, and Tompkins County. And the yellow highlights and red comments and red lines were furnished late this afternoon by counsel for TCAT. They do not really substantially change the provisions of the agreement and certainly don't change the understanding that we all have about what's important for TCAT's ongoing sustainable functioning and security. So with that said, we would like to be able to move forward with this negotiation and not leave it till the very, very last minute, which would be our next meeting, because you probably all recall the current agreement expires October 9th.
Okay, thank you, Deb. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Randy Brown?
So the same question. So we're approving this contract we just got.
On substantially these terms, yes.
It may still change though, or?
It wouldn't change in any substantial way. There may be a detail here or there. And there is also going to be a letter that Susan Brock, the counsel for TCAT, is writing at the request of Cornell and the city, because there was some concern that there might be, if you look at 6.3, it distinguishes between losses attributable to a substantial change in TCAT's operating model or to a major and extraordinary capital investment. And those terms actually were designed to refer to a decision that the board might make to go fare free or to invest in a brand new transit facility. And some of the partners feel like they need to have that spelled out in a letter. But as you'll recall, that particular provision was the main sticking point for us, because initially certain parties didn't want to sign on to share a deficit, and that left TCAT in a position of considerable financial insecurity.
Bill, did you get a chance to review this, or did you feel okay with it? Or?
Yeah, I mean, there's things I kind of wish we did a little differently, but we learned to live with this, and it seems to work.
I just want to say thank you, Deb. You spent hours and hours and hours drafting this up, coming up with different ideas. We argued on the phone for hours and hours and hours as well. So thank you for being steadfast and sticking with this, because I know that TCAT's important for all of us, and it really does a great job at serving our community. So I'm glad that we didn't give up on it, and I'm glad we were creative in coming up with a solution.
Well, and thanks go to Rich John as well.
Yep. Thank you, Rich. Anyone else? Lee Sherliff?
This question for Deborah, given that little description of the substantial change in TCAT, is it fair to say that if there were movement forward on something like fare-free transportation, that this actually strengthens the partner's ability to review something substantial? It's not just going to be a board decision, but you're going to hear about it back at the sponsoring agencies.
Well, yeah,
And weigh in.
you'll notice that there's another paragraph at the end of that section. In the event that the Board of Directors of TCAT Inc. wishes to consider a budget which includes a substantial change, et cetera, it shall submit a full written report and proposal relating thereto to the city, county, and Cornell, and all parties to this agreement shall meet to discuss and consider the proposal. Now that language is thanks to Bill Troy. When that was proposed, at least one of our partners opined that, of course, they would expect that to happen anyway, but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to have it stated in the agreement. And I know that a couple of people said, well, does this mean that we can't ever go fare-free? No, that's not what it means at all. It just means that any decision that TCAT would make that would have that huge an impact on its budget and its operations would be a decision that all of the partners would participate in, and nobody would be taken by surprise.
I appreciate the work that has been done to get this to that agreement. I think it works well for everybody.
Thanks, Lee. I'll just be really happy when it's signed by everyone.
Okay. I see no other hands. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shertliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
13 ayes, 0 noes.
Thank you.
Mike Lane?
Just a quick comment. I think the unity of this legislature on this whole issue has been impressive.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, next we have the minutes of our previous meeting, September 6th, 2022, moved by Randy Brown. Can I have a seconder, please? Seconded by Veronica Pillar. Any comments, questions, discussion? I see none. Let's do a roll call.
Deborah Dawson,
Yes.
Henry Grandison,
Yes.
Rich John,
Yes.
Ann Corman,
Yes.
Mike Lane,
Yes.
Greg Mezzi,
Yes.
Veronica Pillar,
Yes.
Lee Shertliff,
Yes.
Mike Sigler,
Yes.
Travis Brooks,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
Amanda Champion,
Yes.
Shauna Black,
Yes.
13 ayes, 0 noes.
Rich John?
Yes, I'd received a request at a prior meeting that I try to provide a report of the Industrial Development Agency. And we did have a meeting on September 14th. And I just wanted to let the legislature know we had a application submitted for what's called the Cliff Street Retreat. This is on Cliff Street in the city of Ithaca, and it's a redevelopment of the Encodema property to a mixed use with some retail, some office space, perhaps light manufacturing, and some short-term housing. So that process will, or that proposal will be going to a public hearing. And we also determined that we were going to have a discussion at an upcoming meeting on our fund balance. The Industrial Development Agency has been quite fortunate in building up some fund balance, and we're trying to make sure that we have a clear policy on what we should be doing, how much we should be holding, and if there are possible specific economic development activities we could take in the county, how will we go about doing that?
Any questions for Rich John? Okay, I see none. Can I have, or is there any unfinished business? Okay, can I have a mover to adjourn, please? Moved by Deborah, seconded by Mike Sigler. All those in favor? Yes, we're adjourned. Thank you. Were you stretching, Sigler? Was that not a second?